So then, this is our second year of hosting the Accessibility Awareness Week. Last year, Accessibility to Me was based around our personal experiences, and we encouraged people to share their own personal experiences around accessibility, diversity, and inclusion issues. And this was a fantastic success. It actually triggered 1 million conversations worldwide, which was brilliant. This year's theme is going to be on One World, and particularly with everything that's happening in the world this year, it's very important for us as a world to come together, whether that's socially, economically, or even environmentally. And one of the areas that we're going to particularly concentrate on is access to content and the lack of inclusion because of not being able to understand the language that the website is. So Recite's position is just to try and highlight that there is other access and inclusion issues that don't just revolve around disabilities like the one I have, which is dyslexia. So then, first of all, we're going to kick off with an introduction to our panelists. So I'll start off myself. My name is Ross Linnett. I am the CEO and the founder of Recite Me.
Amanda.
Hi, everybody. I'm Professor Amanda Kirby. I'm the CEO of Do It Solutions and a specialist in the field of neurodiversity.
Di.
Hi there, my name's Di Keller and I'm the Inclusion and Belonging Strategic Lead at Karbon Homes, and look both within Karbon Homes and within the North East to support diversity and inclusion.
Stephen.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Steve Donovan. I'm the Consumer Vulnerability Lead at OVO, but I also lead on our Access Network, which is focused on powering accessibility for everyone at OVO. So in short, that means that we get to experience and work on customer journeys, but also think about how we put that into practice for our people at OVO as well.
Excellent. Thanks, guys. So one of the first things we're trying to do is we're going to try and stimulate thinking as well as just blasting information at people. So one of the good ways to start is with an interactive poll. And I'll pass over to Michael to take you through the poll questions and then show you the results.
Thank you very much. So yes, let's start with our first poll today. So between the year 2000 and 2022, how much has the worldwide usage of the internet increased in that time? 35%, 135%, or 1,355%? And if you don't mind casting your votes, and we can see what the room's thinking. Thank you very much.
See, most people got it. Yeah, the boom has been absolutely massive. It's 1,355%, and particularly with so many countries coming online where English is not the first language, it does provide an accessibility and inclusion challenge to content online. But first of all, let's kick off with Amanda Kirby, who's going to talk to us about creating a neurodiverse, supportive workplace that positively impacts organizations.
Thanks very much. Well, hello, everybody. And I want to just talk to you for a few minutes, first of all, to talk about what is neurodiversity and why it's important to have a neuro-inclusive workplace. So neurodiversity is the way we think, move, act, process, hear, and see information. It's the way we do these things differently. And we all do those things differently. So billions of different brain cells are connecting in billions of different ways. So nobody owns neurodiversity. And actually we can be born neurodivergent and we can acquire neurodivergent traits and challenges throughout our life. So like Ross could be born with dyslexia, somebody else might actually acquire a vision impairment, a hearing impairment, later on in life, or may develop something that makes their motor function using a keyboard harder to do. So we're talking about neurodiversity is us all, and nobody owns that label. And neurodivergence is where we diverge from a social norm. And this is really important when we're thinking about accessibility, because actually, often we're thinking about a bell curve, which is designed for a few people moving through the employment system. So people who benefit best going into employment are those who can speak, can fill in a form, don't need the accessibility features, but actually they do, and they actually use them every day. I asked somebody recently, how often do you use closed captions on a day-to-day basis, but you don't have a hearing impairment? And I got 73% of people use closed captions. And also we use things like hearing things spoken to us as well. So if English isn't your first language, you might actually want to hear it as well. So this is really important. And I asked the same question, that 81% of people actually use the sound to replay what they're reading, even though they don't actually have a visual impairment. So neurodivergent is the way we diverge away from this social construct. And in employment, as I said, if you can talk the talk in an interview, you do really well. If you can respond to a question quickly, then you do really well. But actually, to be neuro-inclusive means we need to flatten that bell curve, because we're losing talent. We're missing people who could be in the workplace that can't get in. And about 20% of people are neurodivergent. They veer away from that bell curve. And a lot of them have got spiky profiles with really big strengths, but may have some challenges. And this is where accessibility is really important, because by doing something automatically, we're preempting people having to say they are X or Y to get what they need. And that's why inclusive processes are really, really important. Now, in the workplace, we need to, why is it important? Well, we need to attract talent more than ever. We can't get the talent into the jobs that we want. And by having accessibility tools, you're opening the door to people who may not come with a label, don't know they have got a diagnosis, may not want a diagnosis. You're just allowing them to have accessibility all the way through. We also need to recognize that 20% of the people in your workforce are going to be neurodivergent as well. And so by having tools that are there and available for everybody, it allows you, whether you're become neurodivergent or have disabilities later on in life where you need support, or you're just needing help day to day, can really make a difference. Because sometimes we talk about dyslexia, but actually somebody who has English as an additional language, having text to speech can be really useful, and speech to text as well. Seeing things actually on the screen and hearing them and translating them. So it doesn't actually only benefit those people who we're saying are dyslexic or dyspraxic or have ADHD. And the reality really for people who are neurodivergent is all of those things overlap often. So we don't all fit into neat silos. We might need accessibility tools for some things and not for others. And that's why being inclusive, putting it in the fabric of what you do, means you don't have to retrofit person after person. It's just available for everybody to use it when they need to. And that's why I think it's really important that accessibility, I'm passionate about it because I think it's really important, because it's the way we automate and not have to think about it in a retrofitting sort of way. So I hope that's a useful intro to some of the conversation we're going to have this afternoon.
Thanks very much, Amanda. We've done plenty of talks together in the past, and I always find it very, very, very informative. So I always learn something new. Okay, then, now let's deep dive into creating an inclusive workplace with Stephen.
Thanks, Ross. And yeah, we've been doing quite a lot at OVO because we have such a kind of clear and centered plan around Plan Zero, which is all about how do we take our customers on this journey to kind of zero carbon living. But for that to really work, we need to make sure that we're creating a real diverse kind of workplace and making sure that we're attracting people from all kind of talents as well. So what we're trying to ensure is that people with physical, mental, and some of the stuff that we've been talking around neurodiverse as well, that those people feel valued when they come into OVO, and we give them a platform to really kind of perform at their best. So the success that we kind of measure in this area is all about kind of creating that truly inclusive workplace. And for OVO, we do this with something called our belonging networks. So we've got 3 of those that are all kind of dedicated to people with physical or mental or neurodiverse needs. And I'm actually quite lucky enough that I get to lead on one of them all around accessibility, called our Access Network. And I think back to kind of some of my first experiences working with some of our digital teams, but actually looking at kind of customer facing stuff as well. And actually, when we talk about kind of creating inclusive journeys, particularly around digital content and accessibility, the way it's always been explained to me that is actually if we design content that works from an accessibility perspective, it's almost for our kind of coding people, a way of showing that they're really good at doing their job. Even with simple things like kind of talking about kind of tab orders and things like that. Personally, I quite often use the tab feature on my kind of computer. One, because it makes it easier for you to kind of fill in online forms. But in the back of my mind, I'm constantly going, let's make sure this works with things like screen reader technology. And again, unless I actually use that functionality, we're not checking those things on a regular basis. So it's how we kind of create that kind of culture and that rigor in those spaces, which is quite cool. I mean, we saw the stats around how much kind of we've all moved online over the last 2 years, and for us, kind of COVID massively changed the way that we're set up as an organisation, and that again amplified the need for us to kind of focus on digital inclusivity. And I mean, again, and we're very fortunate that we've got some digital teams that really pride themselves on the work that they do and the content they create. And with that in mind, about 18 months to 2 years ago, we actually put the Recite Me tool onto our intranet, so our people-facing platform for delivering our kind of key internal messages. And since launching it, we see about 30 to 60 people each month consistently using the tool. And it's quite exciting, because if we think about how often we speak to our teams and the way that we put those messages out, with it all being online these days, it's essential that we make sure that those messages get out to all of our teams across all the different networks. So regardless of whether you're someone that's got an accessibility need, the tools that we put in place typically just make things a little bit easier. And again, I think back to kind of my life pre-COVID, and a big part of my job as a consumer vulnerability lead at OVO means that I get the joy of reading through some consultations and white papers from the likes of Ofgem and Bayes, and they can be quite meaty. So to actually kind of print those things off, the way I digest that information, I'd always print it off, highlight things, make notes, and those kind of practices. But I found that kind of tools like Recite Me allowed me to actually kind of open up a large document, play it, and almost read it as it's being read to me. Again, things that we've heard about already. So I think it's just making sure that we kind of celebrate the importance of these tools, that they work in a way that allows us to kind of improve overall journeys, not just for people that necessarily kind of identify as even neurodivergent or having an accessibility need. And with the access network that we've got at OVO, we're bringing a whole host of different people from across the organization. So whether that's kind of tech teams or customer facing roles, or even our engineers and facilities teams, it's about bringing everyone together around that kind of common purpose and common focus area to kind of share best practice, but to create the culture that goes with the kind of practices as well. So how do we look at kind of attracting in talent right through to kind of the ways that we actually set up our physical sites and working with the facilities teams to make sure that it works for everyone? Because like I said, we want to create that environment that we're not just power independence for our people, but that they feel they actually belong to something bigger and they feel valued while they're working with us. And the people within the network that we've got, they're really empowered then to kind of hold us accountable to kind of the standards that we set and kind of challenge us if we're not getting it right. So it's really useful to have that kind of that ability to reach across all different arms of the business with people that are really passionate about kind of actually setting some good examples in this space. And on a personal level, I get the kind of the added benefit that this kind of massively overlaps with the work that I do with what I'd probably call my day job at OVO around kind of, again, accessible journeys for customers. And we're quite excited because we're in the process at the moment of, as part of the OVO customer support package that we recently launched, which was all around kind of our response to the cost of living crisis. We noticed that about 80% of the referrals that we had into that scheme were from customers doing it themselves. So we're looking at putting the Recite Me tool onto that platform in the near future again, which means that just, again, more people will be able to do that themselves on a regular basis, which is amazing. And I know this is probably a great opportunity for me to pass over to Di from Karbon Homes, who I think is going to be talking a bit more about the work that they're doing, particularly around customer focus too.
Thanks ever so much, Stephen. Yeah, I think everything that you've said about the workplace and also what Amanda said earlier on around how we have recruited around social norms, but actually we need to make things better in our workplace. That's even more so from our customers as well. So quite often the people in our workplaces are those that conform to the social norms and aren't neurodivergent, and language and all the different elements that things like the Recite Me tool can help with. But actually our customers, especially in things like Karbon Homes, where we offer social housing as one of our things, and OVO with the energy, there are customers from all walks of life out there, and it's the same for the end user for any organisation. It's about making your product, whatever it is, accessible to that broader base. So where we miss out on talent for our organisations and coming in, we are equally missing out on our customers as well if we are not making our products accessible. We know that since the post-pandemic that the world has become much more online, and that can actually be really isolating for some people, either if they don't have the digital literacy to help them, but also if they have ways that they can't interact with it or can't understand the content that is on your website. So it's about really making it more open for everybody so that we can reduce that level of isolation for people, and we can really help them to start to connect to our organisations as we are delivering more and more online. So when we're thinking about our customers, I think for me, I always think, if you think you've got something right, and if you think that it's working really well, there's always more that you can do better. There's always more that you can improve for that. And if you're with a group of people that all think that you're doing well, then you're not reaching out to get that insight from others. So where we have colleagues in our organisations that fit the social norms, how do we know and understand how our customers are receiving that information? So it's really important to understand how your customers are feeling, and also, more importantly, people who aren't your customers, because they might not be able to even access the products and the services that you're offering as well. So you might have a great customer base, but if they are all neurotypical, then how much are you missing out in terms of your product and being able to do that? So I think it's about looking at working with organisations that can check your website for you, that can look and see how accessible they are. And there are lots of places that can help you do that. But working with your customers that you've got as well, that you know that have needs. But it can sometimes be really difficult for people to tell you what's wrong with them, and a lot of people go undiagnosed with certain conditions such as dyslexia and things like that. So we don't necessarily need to just have things there for people that have that label, because if we have some of these tools in place, it can make it better for everyone. And similarly to, as Stephen was saying, some of the enhancements that you get with the Recite Me tool, and we're even starting to see them come into Microsoft 365, although in a not as advanced as we have on the Recite Me tool. And actually, I don't want to sit and read lots of documents, but I'll quite happily put my earphones in and let somebody read them out to me, because I can process that better, and I can make my notes better. So I wouldn't say that I had a condition that needed a tool, but actually it's really improved my productivity at work. So if that's doing that for me at work, how much easier is that making that for our customers as well? So that if English isn't their first language, so that if they do have neurodivergent conditions, all of these things they can access without needing to have that diagnosis, without needing to have to ask. We all have that legal responsibility to provide reasonable adjustments. But wouldn't it be nice if we provided an environment and a world for our customers where they weren't having to ask, where they didn't feel different and isolated, where they could just start to access content? And that can be really beneficial in terms of your reputation and how people see and recommend you as an organisation. So it's really about, for me, with anything around diversity and creating a more inclusive environment, it's trying to remove those barriers so that people can live their life without barriers. And if you're having to ask, that's still a barrier. So how can you get those things put in place so that people aren't having to ask those questions? And there's, as I've said, there's always work that we can all do. And having access to been able to join webinars such as this, been able to connect with different people, been able to hear from different organisations, it really gives you then some insight to take back into your own organisation and to look at what you can do. And it will be an ever-growing journey as well. So you may think, oh, that's all awesome, but how do we do that all together? And you can't. You have to build it up slowly and slowly, but it's about being on that journey and helping things to move forward. So I think that's sort of it from a high level, from a customer perspective. Obviously, I could talk about this for hours, but I know we've got a lot to get through on the content. So I'm going to hand back to Ross now.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much, Diane. Thanks very much, Steve, as well. And a tedious link is I'm an OVO customer, so I get my energy from there. And my mother lives in a Karbon Homes house, so there's the tedious link. But one of the things I would like to pick up on there, and it was a theme that ran through both stories, which were brilliant, was sometimes it's great to provide solutions where people don't have to ask. And one of the mantras that I had when I was a child is I felt I was dyslexic. The school almost insisted I wasn't without testing me. So I thought I was cheating the system by being able to hide that I was dyslexic all the way through my life. It shaped my life potentially in the wrong way for the early part, because I studied engineering and I don't like engineering, but it was as far away from English as you could get. But that type of almost reaction is very, very common in people who have neurodiverse conditions. So I noticed Stephen said on the call that he had it installed Recite Me on the intranet, and between 30 and 60 people were accessing content using our tool. Now, I would hazard a guess that many of those people who were using our tool to access it potentially would not come forward and ask for software to be given to them and declare that they have a neurodiverse condition. So it's just something for people to ponder on, is that one of the themes is it's good to provide tools where there isn't necessarily the need for some people to step forward. Also as well, Karbon Homes, a good link, because we're concentrating on language as a barrier to inclusion. You guys have been a client for over 8 years, and I remember one of the driving factors in the early days was you had many people that did not speak English as a first language, and our tool was there to kind of help people access your content through translations. So that is a nice segue into Michael. We like to try and keep this exciting, and when I say exciting, I should get out more, because exciting to me is a poll these days. So I'll pass it over to yourself, Michael, to do the next poll.
Thank you very much, Ross. So yeah, so on the language theme, approximately what percentage of the world speak English? 7%, 17%, or 27%?
So the answer is actually 17. So well done, people.
Everyone's doing well today.
Yeah, the audience, a very well-versed audience. One of our main focuses from this has been language considerations, and we just wanted to highlight, because our tool is used a lot for languages, of the need and the drive in the need in the marketplace. So Michael, I'll just pass over to you, and if you could just share some of our reports of the amount of.
Yeah, so like we're saying, it's sort of one world is established around languages. We all know it's a barrier that can be approached for website content, and being the internet, our audience is everyone. So over the last 12 months with Recite Me as a product, we've seen 5 million users, which is fantastic. But the interesting part of this is that the toolbar and the translation side of things is actually been around 47% of the usage. And within that usage of the languages, we have 137 language, 64 of them which can be spoken out loud at a touch of a button on anybody's website with Recite Me. And the more spoken languages you can imagine were English, Spanish, French, Welsh, Amanda, and Chinese being the top ones. And from this usage, we've seen 55 million bits of content translated on websites of Recite Me. And these numbers are something I've never, and I could imagine Ross never ever thought would be a thing achievable. It's amazing. So, but it just shows you the importance of how much it's needed and how much the language, a language is needed. For instance, 600,000 pieces of content alone in French as well. So it's a huge factor when it comes to them barriers and being your sort of shop window of your website, being everyone. If you have a product that can go and stretch outside of your region, that a language has to play a big part in how that can, suppose, benefit a business, but more importantly, benefit the people that are on your website.
Cool. Thank you very much, Michael. So just for a closing statement, I'd just like to thank all the guests. I'd always say that, inclusion and accessibility is a fight. And I know everybody on this panel has been playing their part over the many, many years to try and bring us closer to the point where, people feel included and they don't feel excluded. So I just want to thank you all, guys, and I would like to thank the audience as well for participating.
So before we jump off, should we get some takeaways? I think we need to get some actionable points for our audience. So hopefully I haven't put anyone on the spot here.
Yes.
But Amanda, is it okay to start with you? Maybe something that someone could take away that they can maybe look at or action from this call?
I think one of the things with, I work in health and education, and with increasing waiting lists, increasing demand, people who can't read or understand English, or are neurodivergent, or a combination of all, having something like Recite makes a huge difference to accessibility. So I think that's really important. The other bit, under the Equality Act, you've got to make anticipatory adjustments in the workplace. And that's why using something like this proactively means you're on the way to doing that. And that's really important. Like we've said, not everybody's going to tell you, not everybody's going to know, and actually having tools that you can access and you don't have to tell people or ask for it can really make a big difference.
Thank you very much. Stephen?
Thanks, Michael. I think for me, it's all about how do we get closer to our customers and to our people, and involving them when we're creating customer journeys to work for them as well. I mean, I always remember back to kind of when I first got involved in designing kind of accessible customer journeys, and someone made a flippant comment of kind of, oh, that's just a tick box exercise, isn't it? And I remember I kind of searched high and low for kind of some examples of how we could show that it was far from that. And the one that always kind of resonated with me was kind of, I think it was featured in a newspaper once, but it was a picture of a kind of a shop in America, and there was a step as you kind of go into the shop, and in the window of the shop there was a sign that said, "Ramp available for accessibility if needed. Just ask at the desk." And again, that shows where if you take the approach of accessibility being a tick box exercise, you can get it massively, massively wrong. You need to think about who is it that you're designing this for, and not just kind of design a solution that can work, but design a solution that works for them, involve them in creating those solutions, and make sure it is not just the easiest way to develop it, but actually what's the way that works best for your customer.
Thank you very much, Stephen. I think that I did a little talk a few weeks ago, and I used one picture that Ross has used for many years, and it's a picture of a school, an American school, and some kids that are ready to go into school, but the caretaker is basically saying is sweeping the stairs of snow, but the little boy in the wheelchair goes, well, if you just sweep the ramp first, we can all get in. And it's that thing, I think, where everyone's said straight away, there's about how we're not trying to help a certain group of people, we're just trying to create platforms to help everyone. And that's sort of like that missing understanding of what we're all trying to do here. And Di, sorry?
I think for me, it's finding out a little bit more about the barriers that people experience through certain conditions, be it speaking a different language, some of the neurodivergent conditions. There's some great little videos that you can, just Google around it, and you can get people's lived experiences. So if you aren't in an environment where you've got that already within your workforce, or understand that about your customers, you can start to experience and understand some of the challenges that people experience on a day by day. And if that is your life, so if you are that wheelchair user that has to go inside and ask for the ramp, you can guarantee that every day you will experience something, at least one thing that is a barrier. And if that is your whole life, try putting yourself in that person's position of everything and every interaction that you're taking. You have to think about it beforehand. It's going to be a challenge, it's going to be harder. And just sort of indulge your own empathy a little bit to see what that might feel like, and how you can play your part in helping others to experience life without barriers in a much better way.
So I think with some fantastic points from everyone there about what we can do and how we can put ourselves in other people's shoes and try and do better tomorrow than we are today to be more inclusive. So like Ross said, thank you everyone for joining us, and we will be sharing a nice little toolkit with everyone after this event, with some information from our panelists, and hopefully the information there can help you on your accessibility and inclusive journey. So have a great weekend everyone, and thank you very much.
Thanks again, guys. You take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.